What is going on, guys? Welcome back. In this video today, we're going to build a professional AI voice assistant in Python. Now, this is not going to be one of these minimalistic voice assistants that kind of work sometimes. This is going to be a professional assistant that you can call, that you can schedule appointments with, that you can instruct to add and delete to-dos, that you can set reminders with, and so on. It's basically a professional voice assistant that can organize your life.
I am Mike, your personal management assistant. How can I help you today?
Hey, Mike, I would like to see all of my to-dos.
Just a sec. Here is your current to-do list. 1. Walking the dog. Taking the dog out for a walk. Completed. Is there anything else you would like to do with your to-dos?
Yeah, I would like to add a new to-do, which is drink coffee.
Hold on a sec. Your new to-do drink coffee has been added successfully. Anything else I can assist you with?
Yeah, can you delete walk the dog from my to-do list?
Give me a moment. The to-do walking the dog has been successfully deleted from your list.
So let us get right into it. Alright, so we're going to build a professional AI voice assistant in Python today. And what this means specifically is we're going to implement the backend from scratch. So we're going to build an API using FastAPI that provides the functionality that is needed for the assistant. So we're going to have a simple database, we're going to have to-dos, calendar events, reminders, and the API will have endpoints that can create to-dos and check off to-dos or mark them as completed, delete them, list all of them, same with reminders, same with calendar events. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use a platform, a voice platform or voice agent, voice AI platform that is going to interact with our backend. So we're going to have a professional system that is optimized for voice recognition and for conversational AI using the voice interface. And we're going to have this agent, have this platform interact with our backend. So we don't need to take care of the actual voice recognition. It's going to be done professionally for us. We can also attach phone numbers to that, and we're going to mainly focus on the functionality in the backend. I want to show you the process today, and the platform that we're going to use is called Vapi. So this is Voice API. That is what it stands for, and they're actually sponsoring this video. So the idea is, again, we're going to build FastAPI as a backend, and then Vapi, the voice assistants here, are going to be communicating with our backend. So we need to structure the backend in a way that is compatible with this platform. By the way, I hope it's pronounced Vapi. Maybe it's VAPI, whatever you want to call it. But basically, it stands for Voice API, and this is going to interact with our backend, with our FastAPI application. And I want to get right into it. So what you have to do is you just have to sign up for an account. You're going to get free credits, so you don't even have to pay anything to try this. So just create an account, go to the dashboard, and the interface is actually quite simple. So you have the overview where you can see how much money you already spent. Of course, I already spent some credits here to play around with the whole platform. And what you basically do is you create assistants. These assistants, you provide them with a system prompt. So if something very simple, this is the one that I worked with here for preparing the video. And then what you can do is you can add functions or so-called tools to the assistant. So you say, look, this is your prompt. This is how you should talk to the user. But also you have the capability to call these endpoints to create to-dos, delete to-dos, mark them as completed, and so on, and use these endpoints to perform actions depending on what the user tries to do. So you provide a system prompt, you provide a context, but then you also provide capabilities for the model, and you can set up some stuff. I don't want to use this prepared assistant. We're going to create a new one. And what's important as well is that you need to structure your backend so that it's actually compatible with this platform, with Voice API, because the requests that we get and the responses that we send back have to have a certain format. We cannot just go and just get the parameters and just get the response. We have to have a certain structure. There is a predefined structure that we have to use here for the requests and for the responses. So we need to consider that. I'm not going to focus here too much on the documentation, because if you want to know all the details, you can go into the documentation yourself. I'm going to just give you the example that already works right away. So before we do anything here on this platform, we're going to write our FastAPI backend. For this, I'm going to open up my command line. I'm going to navigate to my working directory. And the first thing we want to do is we want to take care of the dependencies. So we need to use pip or pip3 install, and we want to install obviously FastAPI, we want to install SQL Alchemy, and we want to install Pydantic if it's not already installed by FastAPI. So just make sure you have these three packages, and then we're going to open up a new Python file. In my case, I'm going to call this app.py, And here we're now going to write our application. So as I said, I'm not going to show the documentation here. I'm going to explain what the responses and the requests have to look like. So you can either just trust me on that, or you can check it in the documentation yourself. Basically, you're getting specific types of JSON objects with specific fields that you need to look at in order to know what's happening. And you also have to structure your response as a certain type of JSON object. So you cannot just send back the list of to-dos. You have to say there is results, then you have a certain result, then you have a call ID that you're responding to, and so on. So it's not just getting something and sending it back. You also have to parse the proper format. So we're going to use for that from core Python JSON. We're going to use date time as DT, even though I'm not sure. Are we going to use that? Let's just import it for now. We're going to say from typing import union. This is important because, of course, when we use Pydantic, typing is very relevant. So it's going to enforce the types. We're going to say from Pydantic import base model. And then we're going to do the FastAPI import. So we're going to say from FastAPI import FastAPI itself, HTTP exception, and depends. This is going to be important for the database. And then from FastAPI.requests, we also want to import request. And then finally, since we're working with a database, we're going to need SQL Alchemy. So from SQL Alchemy, we want to import create engine. We want to import column. We want to import integer, string, Boolean, and datetime. Then we're also going to say from SQL Alchemy dot ORM. We want to import session maker and session. And then from SQL Alchemy dot extension dot declarative, we want to import declarative base as a basis for our classes that we're going to define. Now, we're going to use a simple SQLite database. Of course, you can change that if you want to. I'm just going to go with a simple database URL here, which is going to be SQLite : /// and then database.db. That's going to be my database. And the engine is now going to be created, create engine, database URL. Then we're going to pass some connection arguments here, a dictionary. I'm going to say check same threat is going to be equal to false. And then we're going to say that the session local is going to be equal to session maker. Session maker. I think now I imported session, which I didn't want to. So session maker, and we're going to say auto commit is equal to false. We don't want to have automatic commits. We also don't want to have automatic flushes. We want to do this manually, and we want to bind this to our engine that we just created. And then we're going to get the base for our classes by saying declarative base, like that. That's basically it for the setup. Then we're going to create our application, which is just FastAPI. By the way, there's of course two types to code this. You can either just use the code and you can just type it off, or you can try to understand it. I don't want to spend here now 2 hours explaining everything about FastAPI. This is not a FastAPI course. If you want to see that, let me know in the comment section down below. I'm going to go a little bit quicker through this because, again, I don't want to cover all the details here. The focus is on implementing all of that. What I'm also going to do here, just as a spoiler already, is I'm going to implement all of the endpoints for to do, and then I'm just going to copy paste the rest of them. So I'm going to copy paste the endpoints for the reminders and for the calendar events, because basically it's all the same. You just have to take care maybe for the calendar to use a different data type. So we're going to use datetime there. But besides that, there's not too much of a difference there. You have the data models and you just create them and look at them and delete them. That's basically it. So I'm not going to go through that. I'm not going to code out all of that because that would just end up being a very long video where we do all the same stuff. But you will find all of the code on my GitHub. So you can go to the link in the description down below. After the sponsor link, of course, you will find also my GitHub somewhere down there, and you're going to be able to find the code in my repository. Having said that, let's get started. We're going to define the classes that we're going to use. As I said, we're going to have to-dos. The to-do class is going to, of course, inherit from base. And we're going to have the following fields. We're going to have, or first of all, let's say that the to-do table name is going to be equal to to-dos. That's the name of the table in the database. And then we're going to say we have an ID. The ID is going to be a column. The data type of that column is going to be integer. This column is also going to be the primary key. And we're going to index it to make access faster. Then the to-do is going to have a title. This is also going to be a column. It's going to be a string. And it's also going to be indexed. We don't need to provide that this is not allowed to be null, because by default, if you don't specify nullable equals true, it's going to be not nullable, so it's going to be required. Then we're going to say description is equal to column string, no index this time, but it has to be nullable because we don't always need a description. And we're going to say completed is going to be also a column, which is going to be a Boolean, and this is going to have a default value of false, because when we create a to-do, it's not going to be completed by default. So that's that. We're going to go then to the reminder base, and the reminder is going to have the table name reminders. So you can see this is already quite repetitive. Of course, the fields are going to be different, but for the most part, we can just copy a lot of stuff here. So I can just copy that. I can keep the ID as it is. I can change title to reminder text, maybe. I can leave that. Maybe I don't want to have an index here. And for the description, I can change this to, oh, now I messed up something. For the description, I can change this to importance, for example. And importance is going to be also a string. It's, I don't want to allow this to be null, so I want to have this as a required field. And then for the calendar event, we're going to have calendar event base. And let's copy a lot of that again, but this time we're going to make some more changes. So calendar events, and then we're going to say ID is still the same, but then we're going to have here title and description. Title, do I want to have an index? Let's index it, why not? And then instead of importance, I want to have dates. So I want to have event from is equal to a datetime object. So it's going to be column datetime required as well. And then I want to say event 2 is going to be a column as well. So that's the basic idea. We have these three data structures. And of course, what I'm going to do in this video is going to be a very small example, and it's not going to be perfect. I can add way more detail to it. I can also, the prompts that I'm going to use are going to be very superficial. The more time you invest into iteratively improving, first of all, of course, your code, but also the prompts that you provide for the individual tools and also for the system prompt in general, the better your model is going to be, the better your assistant is going to be. So I'm going to give you a very basic example here, but of course you can refine this and you can play around with this yourself for free on Vapi. So in order to create this now, we're going to say base metadata dot create all bind equals engine. That's it for the SQL Alchemy stuff. The only thing that we need to do is we need to define a function, get database. This is how it's usually done. DB is equal to session local, and then try to yield. So basically to generate the database, except, or actually not except, sorry. Finally, we're going to also close it. That's a very basic function. We're going to pass it as a parameter to our endpoints. Besides that, now we're going to also need some base models or some models for Pydantic. So what are our requests and our responses going to look like? I'm going to actually let me code out all of that, because the endpoints I'm going to just copy paste. But for now, let's just go with all of that. And this is now where it gets interesting in terms of Vapi, because they have a certain request and response format, and we're going to already implement that here in our Pydantic classes. So we're going to start here with the so-called tool call function. So the response that we get from Vapi is going to have a certain format. It's going to contain a message. This message can contain tool calls, and these tool calls have a function and a name, and that name determines what kind of tool was actually called. We can take that out, and then we can get the arguments from there. So one such function has, as I said, name and arguments. So class toolCall function is going to inherit from base model, and it's going to have a name, which is a string, and arguments, and these are either going to be a string, like a JSON string, or a dictionary right away. So we can just say it's either that or the other. And then the tool call itself, so class tool call, going to inherit from base model. This tool call has an ID. This ID is very important because this ID is going to be what we also have to incorporate into the result. So the basic idea is I get a request, I get a tool call, and I can respond to that, but I also need to, when I send back the results to the voice API, I need to be able to say I'm actually answering this specific tool call. So because of that, we have an ID, and this is actually relevant. And this is also going to have the function, which is a tool call function. So we get the ID for the call and the function itself. From there, we can check the name to know which endpoint is actually requested, and then I can parse the arguments, use them to create a new to-do, for example, and these are like connected. And then, of course, one level above that, we have the message. So the message, also base model, this message contains tool calls, multiple tool calls. So it's going to be a list of tool call. So you can see this hierarchy here. And then one level above that, finally, we have the Vapi request, is what I called it, base model. And this basically contains the message. So now let's recap the structure. You get a request from Vapi. This request has a message object. This message object has a list of tool calls. An individual tool call has an ID, which is important to know what to respond to. It has a function, and this function is composed by a name, so we know what tool was actually called. We can check that, and then we can get the arguments for that tool call. For example, the tool call could be create to do, and the arguments could be title is walk the dog, and description is walking the dog, and then you have completed is false and all that. So these are basically the arguments then. That's the high level perspective here. Then in addition to that, we have responses. So this is what we send back to Vapi. So to do response, base model, the ID is going to be, this is now important because the ID in this case is not the same ID that we have for the tool call. This is the ID for our to do. We don't want to confuse that. So our to-do has an ID like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the tool call ID is a string, like a long identifier that uniquely identifies this specific tool call, and we need to pass it back. But here now we're talking about the to-do ID, which is an integer, the title, which is a string, the description, which is a string, but it can also be nothing. So it can be either a string or none. I'm not sure right now if I could actually use here the OR operator like here. I did it like that in the prepared code. I don't want to break anything, so let's just keep it like this, but maybe this also works like string and or string or none. You can try that if you want to. And then we're going to say completed bool. And then one important thing is we want to specify a config field ORM object relational mapping mode equals to true. That's going to come in handy later on. I'm going to explain that when we get to that point, but we want to have that now for our response objects. Now I can copy this and do the same thing for the reminder. So that's going to be the reminder response. And of course, we just do the same thing with these fields now. So we still have an ID, which is an integer. We have a reminder text, and we have an importance, which is also a string. And we also want to have this config setting here. And then finally, let me copy the to-do again. We're going to just say we have ID, we have title and description, and then we have here event from is going to be DT datetime, and event 2 is also DT datetime. And that's, of course, our calendar event response. So again, these two are going to, I'm going to implement the endpoints by copy pasting. You will find all of them on GitHub. But the endpoints are going to be basically the same as for the to-do with small adjustments. We're going to comment on the code, but I'm not going to type it out here from scratch because that would end up being a very long tutorial where you don't really learn a lot because I'm just typing all the time. And now the important thing is, let's define the endpoints. So we're going to have, this is one unique thing about Vapi. Every endpoint, no matter if you're creating something, if you're getting something, deleting something, everything has to be post. Now this might change in the future, but right now every single endpoint is going to be a post endpoint, and you're not going to have any like URL parameters or anything. Everything is going to be submitted in the request. This is how it works currently. So we're going to say app.post, and we're going to define the endpoint create to do. So this create to do endpoint, of course, is going to create a new to do object in a database. We're going to say def create to do. And the first parameter here is going to be a Vapi request. So the request is going to be of type Vapi request. This is, remember, that thing here where we have a message that contains tool calls, that contains IDs and functions, or ID and function, and then name and arguments. That is what we're getting here. And the second thing, of course, is going to be our database, which is of type session and depends on getDB. So we pass getDB as a callable entity here. And this is basically all we need for this endpoint. Now, the important thing is you don't just want to react to any tool call. You want to make sure that you're actually reacting to the proper tool call, because of course the voice API can make mistakes and call the wrong endpoint. We want to make sure that we're actually reacting to the correct thing. So we're going to say for tool call in request message tool calls. So again, this assumes that our model, that our request has the proper structure: request, then message, then tool calls, which of course is going to be enforced by specifying it's a Vapi request, because now I say this has to have this format, otherwise it's incompatible, otherwise it's invalid structure that I'm passing here. And so basically I'm iterating over the tool calls, and if any of these tool calls that I'm looking at here, if there are multiple, if the function of that tool call has the name create to do, if that's the case, then I'm going to get the arguments from that function by saying tool call function arguments. And again, we don't have to check for anything. We don't have to say if this is part of the request, because all of that is going to be handled by the models that we defined up here, which is why we do that, because it's quite convenient for enforcing structure. So we're going to get the arguments here, and then we're going to break out of this loop once we find the thing that we're looking for. Now, if I end the loop without breaking, this is how you do this for else structure. If this happens, so if I get out of the loop without having found what I'm looking for, I have to raise an HTTP exception, because obviously there is a problem with the request. So status code 400, this is not valid. I'm going to say invalid request. That doesn't work. Otherwise, I'm going to continue with my code. I'm going to say if is instance. The only thing that I need to check now, since I provided two possible types, is I need to know if the arguments are a string or a dictionary. If I have a string, I want to load the string into a dictionary by using JSON. So I'm going to say if instance argument string, I'm going to say arguments is going to be equal to JSON load from that string arguments. And then basically in all cases, I'm going to have the dictionary here. The only problem, of course, would be if I have some invalid format that cannot be parsed as JSON. But what we're going to do now is we're going to say the title for the to-do that I'm trying to create is going to be in the arguments. It's going to be the title field. So I'm going to get this. If there is no title, I'm just going to have an empty string. And then I'm going to say also the description is going to be equal to get the description field. If it doesn't exist, empty string. And then I'm going to just create a new to-do. To-do is going to be equal to to-do. Title is going to be equal to title. Description is going to be equal to description. Completed is going to be false by default. I don't need to specify that. And then we're going to say database add this new to-do. Database commit. And I don't think that we actually need the next line that I have in my code. It refreshes. Maybe let's just add it. Refresh to do. I'm not sure if this is necessary, so maybe you can say note try without. Maybe I'm going to remove that to see if it still works. But when I have prepared code, I like to stick to that, because I'm not sure if I when I prepared this code, figured out that this is necessary, or if it's just a mistake. So I'm going to just keep it here. And then we're going to return now the following format. This is now the format of a Vapi response, you could say. What we do here is we say we have a dictionary that has a field results. This field results now is a list of dictionary objects. So I have a list, and in this list I have dictionary objects. And these dictionary objects have the fields tool call ID, which is what I mean by you need to get the ID from the request and respond to it. This is now exactly what I talked about here. We have this tool call ID, which we have to keep track of, and we have to return it as well to know what are we actually responding to. This is going to be tool call.id, and then the actual response that we're sending to the agent. And in this case, it's going to be result equal to just success to indicate this worked. So this creates a new to-do in our database. And now we're going to define 3 more endpoints for to-dos. Then I'm going to copy paste the rest for reminders. Or actually, before we do that, we're going to go into Vapi and see how this is done actually. But now we're going to say app.post. And the endpoint this time is going to be get to-dos, which might be a little bit unusual because we're getting to-dos in a post endpoint, but that's how it's done. And we're going to define get to-dos. Again, what we want to have here, as always, is going to be a Vapi request and a database, which is session. Now, how often do you want to indent this? Yes. There you go. Session is going to be equal to depends, get db. And then this is going to be our function. Quite simple. All we're going to do here is basically same logic as above. We want to do this. Now, the only difference here is we don't need arguments, because if we have the proper function name, which is in this case get to-dos, if that's the case, what we're going to do is we're just going to get all the to-dos by saying database query to-do all. Give me all the to-dos. And then our result is going to be same structure as before. Copy this, paste it down here, indent this, or actually in this case we need to 2 times indent this. And our result is not going to be just success. Our result is going to be a list, and this list will contain all the to-do objects. So it's going to be to-do response. I think there's a typo. To-do response. And that is what a to-do response looks like. And this is now why this is important. You're going to notice why we need this ORM mode equals true, because what this allows us to do now is in this list comprehension that we're going to write, to-do response, we're going to say to-do response dot from ORM. So from object relational mapping, to-do dot dictionary for to-do in to-dos. So we're going through all the to-dos from our database. We're passing them here. We're basically creating the object, the response object, based on the schema that we have defined, and then we get a dictionary from that. And this is what we pass here in the result list. That is how it basically works. Besides that, I think we don't need to do anything for this endpoint, so we're going to go to the next one. The next one is going to be complete to do, which is not the same as delete to do. Complete to do is just going to set it to completed, but keep it in the list. So we're going to say app post complete to do. And it's going to be define complete to do. Maybe I can close this right away to make this not indent all the time. Request, Vapi request, then database session depends on get db. And then we're going to do same structure as before. This time we need to do some action. So let me just copy all of this here. And we're going to then paste it here. We're going to indent this. And the idea is the same. We go through all the tool calls. If one of the tool calls is called complete to-dos or complete to do, that is going to be our function. What we want to do here is we want to get the arguments and basically do the same thing as before. Now, is this actually... Okay, this is not properly indented because that should be one level to the left, I think. There you go. So it's going to be for tool call in request message tool calls. If we find the proper one, we're going to extract the arguments. Then again, we do the same thing. If it's a string, turn it into a dictionary. And then we want to do two things. We want to check if a to-do ID was passed, and if it was passed, if it exists. So we're going to say to-do ID is equal to arguments get ID. And basically, we're going to say if not to-do ID, we want to raise an HTTP exception. Actually, I'm going to just raise this one, maybe with a different detail message. The default, the detail is going to be missing to-do ID. And if an ID was passed, I want to know if it exists. So I'm going to say to-do equals db query to-do dot filter to-do dot ID is equal to to-do underscore ID, the first entry, which is just one. So it's always going to be one, but we call the first function to get this one element. And then we want to say if not to-do. So if we don't find anything, we're going to raise an HTTP exception, but this time the status code is going to be 404, not found. So we're going to say to-do not found. If not to-do not found. There you go. And after that, we want to just get this to-do if it exists, and we want to set the completed to true. So we want to say the completed attribute to true. So to-do completed equals true. And then what we want to do is we want to commit that, and we want to refresh to-do. Now, this time we definitely want to do that. And the response is going to be the same as before. We just say success. There's nothing to return here, no information that the voice agent is going to need from us. They just need to know, or it just needs to know that the request was handled successfully. And finally, let's go to the deletion. We're going to say app.post delete to do, and then def delete to do. And we're going to say again, guess what? Request is going to be a Vapi request. And then the database is going to be a session, which depends on get DB. There you go with that. And here it's quite simple. We again can copy most of that. We have to find the to-do. I think that's going to be equivalent. So we basically just say, okay, find the correct tool call, delete to-do. Then get the arguments. If you get an ID, check if the to-do exists. And if it exists this time, we'll just say db delete to-do, db commit. And then the response is going to be, again, the same as before. That is it. So as I said, we're going to copy paste the other endpoints. You can do that as well if you want to, or you can write them as an exercise yourself. But let's go ahead now just with that and test it. And how are we going to do that? I'm going to run this now by saying uvicorn app py app. I think this is how, or actually was it app? Oh, I think I mistyped something here. It has to be SQLite. The E is missing. Uvicorn app. This is now listening on localhost, and you have two ways now to test this. You can either run this on a server, so you either have a virtual private server that you can run this on, or you can use ngrok. So ngrok is a way to tunnel a public URL to your localhost. Now, I'm not going to go through the installation. The installation is quite simple. Let me maybe open up the website, then I can show it to you. ngrok API gateway. The only thing you need to do is you need to sign up. It's all for free. You don't need to do anything. It's, I think, is it open source? I'm not sure, but you just sign up for free. You make an account, and then you can set up ngrok on your system. That's not going to be the focus of this video today. I think I even have a tutorial on my channel on how to do that. But the magic is I have this running now on localhost. All I have to do to make this publicly available is I have to say ngrok and then http and then http ://127.0.0.1 port 8000. and that is going to run this, going to tunnel this basically to the internet. So that is now the URL that is being forwarded to localhost, which means that if I provide this URL to the voice agent can call this URL. Now, the downside with that is when I restart that, so if I terminate this and run it again, I'm going to get a completely different URL. So it's not going to be the same. Every time I start this, basically I have to reconfigure my voice agent, but this is just an easy way to play around with that if you don't have a virtual private server. Otherwise, just do this on the virtual private server, provide the IP address, everything's simple. But in this case, we're going to do it like that because every single one of you guys can do this locally at home. Everyone can do that. So I'm going to copy and paste that. So I'm going to just copy that, and we're going to use that as our server. Now, let me take this actually and beam it to another workspace just so I have it out of sight, so I don't accidentally terminate it. And now we're going to go back to Vapi. And for that, let me move this onto my second screen. And here now we're going to create a new assistant. So I'm going to use a blank template. You can also see what's already out there as a template, but I'm going to call this now voice, or let's say personal voice assistant, blank template, create assistant. And there are a bunch of customization options. So for example, I can choose the model that I want to use. I personally prefer the GPT-4o cluster. It's not that expensive. So you can see also the cost up here. I think, is it going to change now for 4o? Usually it's 10 cents, I think. But yeah, it's 9 cents per minute right now. And you can also change the provider. So you have quite a bit of choice here. And what we want to do now is we want to say, how should this model greet the user? We could say something like, hey, I am Mike, your personal management assistant. How can I help you? Help you today? Question mark. And then we can provide a system prompt. We can say something like, you are Mike, the personal assistant that can manage to-dos, reminders, and calendar events. Help the customer or help the user with the following use cases by calling, or maybe before we specify the function calls, let's just keep it at that. Let's see how we can call this already without any functionality. So of course, this is not going to communicate with our backend yet. This is just now a simple voice assistant, but I can already try it out, and I can also go to voice and choose a voice that I like. I think by default, it's a professional woman. Doesn't make a lot of sense for someone called Mike. So let's maybe go to something like commercial man, if you want to use that. You can also use a woman if you want to, just change the name then. And now we can talk with the assistant. I hope this works while I'm recording, but we can give it a try.
Hey, I am Mike, your personal management assistant. How can I help you today?
Hi, Mike. What are you capable of?
Hi there. I'm here to help you manage your to-dos, reminders, and calendar events. Here's a quick rundown of what I can do. 1. I can create, update, and organize your to-do lists. You can add tasks.
Okay, so we're not going to continue that because he will now just say stuff. He doesn't have the capability to do that yet, but we're going to add these functions. So how this basically works now is we have our API backend, and we're going to specify functions that this voice assistant is capable of. And these functions in Vapi are called tools. So I'm going to go to tools, and you can already see here, we're not going to use them. These are the ones that I used for the preparation, but basically these are functionalities here. So I can click on new tool, and I can say custom tool. And now what I have to provide here is the server URL. So I basically have to just copy paste the ngrok URL from before, / of course the endpoint that I want to be using. So one thing that I could do here is I could say create _ to do, and that is going to be the server URL that we're targeting here. We can also specify custom headers if necessary. In our case, this is not necessary. So I'm just going to click on save. I'm going to go to next. And here now we need to specify the properties. These properties should be what we have in our application. So if I go back to my directory here, if I open up the app.py file, we need to be able to cover these fields here. So we're going to say ID is going to be the ID of the to-do. Maybe let me zoom in a little bit so you can see that. The ID of the to-do, this is going to be an integer, or actually we don't need to do that because it's going to be automatically incremented, so we can actually go to the title right away. The ID is going to be important for the deletion. It's not going to be important for the creation. So we're going to say the title of the to-do. Then we're going to say properties plus. We're going to define description, the description of the to-do. And of course, the more time you invest here to properly specify everything. So if you say, okay, this is the description of the to-do, oftentimes optional, it should be around this size and so on, or this is necessary for this and that. The more context you provide, the better the assistant is going to know what to do. I'm going to keep it simple now. And actually, we don't need anything else, just title and description. And we can set title as a required field here. So you don't want to submit anything without a title. So next, then we can zoom out a little bit here. What's your tool name? Let's call this create to do. This is important because that is exactly what we're getting here with the function name. So that is what we're passing here. This string right here in our code has to be equivalent to this string right here, because otherwise they're going to be different. There's going to be a mismatch. Here now, I would take the time to describe this function properly. So I'm going to, for the sake of this tutorial, keep it quite simple. This is the function that creates new to-do entries. It takes the to-do title and description, optional, and adds the to-do to the database. Something like that. Next. Now what you can do here is you can specify specific static messages if you want that. So by default, if you don't provide anything, it's going to generate an answer. So it's going to intelligently, like ChatGPT or any other large language model interface, is going to generate a response. If you want to have a static response on success, on error, you can do that. So if you type something like, I successfully created your to-do, it's going to every time say, I successfully created your to-do. It's not going to generate an answer. So you want to create that. And then we have here this create to do function. Now I have to take care to not confuse these prepared ones with the new ones. But what we do now is we have this functionality. I can go to my assistant. I can go to this personal voice assistant here. And we're going to go to functions. We're going to say select tools. And now I can choose from my list of tools here. So this is going to be my new one, create to do. When I click on it and I publish and save this here, this voice assistant has now the capability to target my backend. We can see that that is the case by taking this terminal here and maybe zooming out a little bit. Now I'm going to talk to my assistant. I'm going to say, please create a new entry to my or on my to-do list.
Hey, I am Mike, your personal management assistant. How can I help you today?
Hey, Mike, can you add a new entry to my to-do list?
Of course. Could you please provide me with the title and description, if any, for the to-do entry?
Yeah, so the title would be walking the dog and the description is taking the dog out for a walk.
This'll just take a sec. Your to-do item, walking the dog, with the description, taking the dog out for a walk, has been successfully added to your list. Is there anything else?
All right, so I'm going to end the call now. You can see that what this assistant or what this voice agent did is it sent a create to do post request. It got 200 OK. This is the IP of the voice agent. I can go now to this directory and I can open up my database with SQLite. So I can say SQLite 3 database DB. I can zoom in a little bit and I can say select everything from to-dos. And there you go. Okay, now in this case, there's a typo. It's doc with CK. So that's maybe something that can be improved. Maybe if you use a different language model, it's going to do it better. But it at least added the to-do. So if I say something else now, like take a shower, go shopping, program AGI or something like that, it's going to put it here as a to-do. And in this case, it's uncompleted, so it's 0. And like that, we can add now all the functionalities. So again, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this for the to-do endpoints, and then we're going to briefly see how this is also done for the other ones. So all we have to do is repeat the process. Go here, new tool, custom tool. I hope I still have the URL. There you go. Copy paste that, get to-dos. And then we're going to say save. We're going to say next. We're going to say, what was the endpoint? We actually don't have to provide anything here, so there's no property that we need to provide. This is going to be get to-dos, get a list of all to-dos from the database. Or maybe gets should be the proper description. It gets a list of all to-dos from the database. Yeah, let's just keep it like this, create. And I'm now going to also do the other one. So I'm going to say that /complete_to-do. This, of course, is going to take more information. So here we need to provide the ID of the to-do. So it's going to be the ID of the to-do object, or of the to-do object. If not explicitly specified by user, the list of to-dos should be loaded and the ID inferred from the title. Oh no, now I copied that, so I have to copy my ngrok URL again. But that is the ID. We need that as a required field. Next, it's going to be complete to do. It's going to be completes an existing to do, which means it sets the completed attribute to true. If the ID, this is what I actually copied this for, if not explicitly specified by the user, the list of to-do should be loaded and the ID inferred from the title. So next, create. Let me just briefly copy here the server URL. And now finally, we're going to do that /delete to-do, save, next. Then it's going to be ID again, ID of the to-do element. If not specified, load all to-dos and infer ID from title. That's of course required. Next, delete to-do. Again, take more time if you're doing an actual professional voice assistant. Take more time to do this properly. But here we're going to say deletes to-do from database if ID not explicitly specified, load all to-dos and infer ID from title, because the user is usually not going to say delete to-do with ID 24. It's going to say delete the to-do walking the dog from my to-do list. So I want to create this. There you go. And now we have these tools. Let's go back to our assistant. Let's zoom out a little bit. Let's go back to functions. And here now add the functions, get to-dos, complete to-do, delete to-do, and publish. And now let's see if we can do that. Let me get my terminal here back. And now let's talk with the assistant.
Hey, I am Mike, your personal management assistant. How can I help you today?
Hey Mike, can you please show me all of my to-dos?
Hold on a sec. You have one to-do item. 1, walking the dog. Taking the dog out for a walk. No, if you need help managing this to-do, just let me know.
Okay, I think the no was about the status of completion, but let's ignore that for a second. Can you create a new to-do object?
Of course. What's the title and description of the new to-do?
The title is read a book.
This'll just take a sec. Your new to-do, read a book, has been successfully created. Let me know if you'd like to add more details or manage any other tasks.
Can you please complete the item called walking the dog?
Just a sec. The to-do item, walking the dock, has been marked as complete. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like to manage.
Can you list all of my to-dos?
This'll just take a sec. Here are your current to-dos. 1. Taking the dock out for a walk, completed. 2. Not completed. Let me know if you'd like to edit, complete, or delete any of these.
What was 2 again? I didn't catch that.
Number 2 is read a book. This to-do doesn't have a description yet and is not completed.
Okay, perfect. Can you delete read the book from the to-do list?
Hold on a sec. Read a book has been successfully removed from your to-do list. Let me know if there's anything else I can assist you with.
Just show me all my to-dos one more time.
One moment. Here's your current to-do list. 1. Walking the dock. Task completed. Let me know if there's anything else you need help with.
All right, so I moved my camera so you can see all of this was successful. All of this did actually database operations. So I had the creation, I had the getting, I had the creation again, I had completing a to-do, displaying again, deleting. All of this worked. Now we can also go into the database and we can actually see that this is now the new status. Walking the dog, even though it's misspelled, has the status 1, which means completed. So this works pretty well. You can see that this works pretty well. There are some issues here and there sometimes with the voice recognition, but again, this can change with the parsing of the output. So this can change, of course, depending on the model you use. But that is the basic blueprint. Now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing for calendar, events, and for reminders. And for that, I don't want to type it out again because we could just spend one more hour here just typing the code. I don't want to do that, so I'm going to copy paste this from my prepared code. Again, the reminder, you're going to find all of this in the description down below, so you don't have to type it out yourself. You can actually just copy paste this from my code. And the reason we can do that is because nothing really changes here. It's just the same pattern over and over again. So let's go through it quite briefly. We have delete to do. This was the last one. Then we have add reminder. What does it do? Goes through the tool calls, add reminder. Okay, parses the JSON. Reminder text is equal to reminder text. Importance equals to importance. Create a new element, add it to the database, give the response. Exact same thing as creating a to-do. Get reminders, same idea. We get the reminders. We have the from ORM function again. List all the reminders, return them in the same structure, same as before. Delete reminder, get the ID. If no ID, return 400. If no reminder with that ID, return 404. Delete, commit, return. Yeah, in this case now, I think it's done differently. So actually we want to return success here, but it doesn't really matter. We're not going to do anything with the information. Calendar entry, same thing, just with the date types now. And one thing that's important maybe for the date is that we're parsing this from an ISO format. So the important thing is we should also specify to the backend or to the voice agent that the backend will parse this from this format. So we need to provide the format that we're going to use here also to the AI. So we're gonna just take care of that. And then for get calendar entries and delete calendar entry, same idea as before, nothing fancy. That's the same stuff as before. So let's do that. Let's get rid of that. Let's restart it. Maybe we can also restart it with reload. And now what we're going to do to save time is I'm just going to use the tools that I already have, but I have to adjust, of course, the URL here. So we're going to go, these of course are the to-dos. We already have those, but for reminder now, I'm going to show you what it looks like. I have this to-do name, add reminder, to-do description or tool description is creates a new reminder with text content and importance level, high, medium, low. Then the properties here described again. That's basically it. Only difference, of course, change the URL. So we're going to do it like this. Again, I'm not skipping anything important here. We're just doing the same thing over and over again. The only thing that is somehow different is adding a calendar entry because of the date format. But besides that, all of these endpoints are trivial and the same as before. So we have get reminders, add reminder. We actually don't have delete, so we can add that. But here now you can see for add calendar entry, schedules a new calendar event with a title, optional description, start time, event from, and end time, event to, uses ISO datetime format. For if only a day is provided, it should be 24 hours on that day. And we have here now our properties. We could say ISO date format, ISO date format. Hope this is enough to do this properly. Then save that. Did we change the URL? I don't think so. Save that. Did we actually save it here? No, I didn't save that. We need to, of course, save that as well. So save. Save. Get calendar entries, integration. Save. And let's see if that already works. So let's move this back here. Let's get started with a call. Now, of course, we need to add this as a tool. So we go to functions, we go to add, and we want to add here this, and this. We want to publish. We want to get this back. And now we're going to talk to the assistant.
Hey, I am Mike, your personal management assistant. How can I help you today?
Hey, Mike, do I have anything on my calendar?
This'll just take a sec. It looks like you don't have any events scheduled on your calendar at the moment. Is there any?
Okay, this is now interesting because it didn't actually send anything to my endpoint. So let me just double check what the problem is with the tool. Get calendar entries. Okay, it has the old server URL. So why is that? Oh, because I need to save it here. I need to save it here. Okay, made a mistake. Need to save it down here. I'm not sure if I also have to save it up there. No, I don't think so. So let's do this for the reminders again. By the way, one thing I want to show you here for troubleshooting, which is kind of useful, is you can see all the requests and the responses that are being sent. So I'm going to show you that here in a second. Let me just fix this. Save and just make sure I can save. What's the problem here? Oh, I need a slash. There you go. Save. You can go to logs and you can go to webhooks and you can see exactly what is happening here. So you can see for these successful calls, I have a request here, what happened, content type, and this is what the voice agent is actually sending. So we have message, tool calls, ID, function, name, arguments, and then you can see how our server responded. Our server responded with result and then results and then tool call ID, result, and whatever. So, and you can see in this case here, it tried to send a request, but we got 404 as a result because this endpoint doesn't exist. So let's go back, talk with assistant. Let's move this here to my screen again.
Hey, I am Mike, your personal management assistant. How can I help you today?
Hey, Mike, do I have anything on my calendar?
Give me a moment. It looks like your calendar is currently empty. You don't have any scheduled events. Would you like to add something to your calendar?
Yeah, please add for March 15th that I have a meeting.
What time should I schedule the meeting for on March 15th? If you want it scheduled for the entire day, just let me know.
From 2 p.m. to 4 p.m.
Give me a moment. Your meeting has been scheduled for March 15th from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Could you just tell me what year we're talking about?
Certainly. I have scheduled a meeting for you on March 15th from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Is there anything else you would like me to do?
No, I just wanted to know what year we're talking about.
My apologies for not mentioning it earlier. The meeting has been scheduled for March 15th, 2024.
Okay, got it. So, are there any events on my calendar in 2023?
Just a sec. There are no events on your calendar for 23. The only event currently scheduled is the meeting on March 15th, 2024.
Okay, thank you. Can you add a new reminder to my list?
Of course. What would you like the reminder to say? And how important is it, low, medium, or high?
It's very important, so it's high, and it's about buying AGI.
One moment. The reminder to buy AGI with high importance has been added to your list.
Okay, can you show all my reminders?
This'll just take a sec. You have one reminder. Buy AGI. Hi, is there anything else you need?
So, okay. The reminder was kind of random right now. I didn't know what to say, so I said buy AGI, which doesn't make a lot of sense, but you get the idea. Now, I didn't implement a deletion. You can do that. I don't want to do this now. But this is how you can build your own customized voice assistant. So you can choose a voice, you can adjust the system prompt, you can do so many things here. And this can also be attached to a phone number. So you can actually go to phone numbers, you can buy phone numbers if you want to, and you can actually have an assistant that people can call. So you can also make this a customer support bot. And this is how easily this can be done. So I just have to write a FastAPI backend with a database. I can add some more logic there if I want to. And then I just have to call my assistant, and the assistant recognizes what it has to do. It's a little bit like intent recognition, but it's also with LLM capabilities. So it's not like the intent-based chatbots that we're building using classification, but it's actually a large language model that also has this tool calling / function calling capability. Now, I also talked to the owners of Vapi, and they provided me with the optimal settings to make this the best experience possible. So I'm going to show you how you can configure this voice agent to be optimal. And for that, we're going to start here in the model section. By the way, you can also play around with this. Maybe you find a configuration that you like more. There's a lot of things that you can customize. But for the model, we're going to go with OpenAI GPT-4o, as we already did. We're going to turn down the temperature because the idea is the lower the temperature, the more it's going to stick to the system prompt. Now, what you want to do if you deploy a bot for production or a voice agent for production is you want to make sure that the system prompt describes the basic use cases. So you want to say you're Mike, the personal assistant. Then you want to say stuff like a typical interaction looks like this. And then you provide like the different functions you can call and so on. I'm not going to do this here because I don't want to code this out, but this is how you get optimal results. The lower the temperature and the more detailed your system prompt, the more accurate your assistant, your voice agent is going to be. Now for the transcriber, we're going to go here. We're going to choose Deep Gram English. You can also change the language, so you can use a different language here. And for the model, we're going to go with Nova 2 phone call, since we're having a phone call here. So I'm going to use that. And we're going to enable, this is now something that's hidden from my camera. Let me move that briefly. We're going to also enable down here the background denoising. So I'm going to click on this. We're going to do that. And then we're going to go to voice. For voice, we're going to go with the provider 11 Labs. So we're going to choose something from here. Let's go with Drew. And then we're going to move on to the advanced settings. Here we're going to scroll down. We're going to enable smart endpointing. This basically enables more accurate speech endpoint detection. So I'm going to turn this on. And we're going to also increase the wait time to 0.6 seconds. So as you can see here, you can also configure stuff like when the assistant should stop speaking, for example, after a certain time or after a certain number of words. There's a lot you can customize here. I recommend you play around with this, but these are now the optimal settings that were provided to me. So let's give it a try one more time. Let me move down my camera again, and let's keep it there. And let's also move back the terminal so we can see the endpoints that are being called. Let's talk to our assistant.
Hey, I am Mike, your personal management assistant. How can I help you today?
Hey, Mike, I would like to see all of my to-dos.
Just a sec. Here is your current to-do list. 1. Walking the dog. Taking the dog out for a walk. Completed. Is there anything else you would like to do with your to-dos?
Yeah, I would like to add a new to-do, which is drink coffee.
Hold on a sec. Your new to-do drink coffee has been added successfully. Anything else I can assist you with?
Yeah, can you delete walk the dog from my to-do list?
Give me a moment. The to-do walking the dog has been successfully deleted from your list. Is there anything else you need help with?
Yeah, can you mark the drink coffee to-do as completed?
This'll just take a sec. The to-do drink coffee has been marked as completed. Anything else I can assist you with?
So do I have any calendar events?
This'll just take a sec. You have one calendar event, scheduled from March 15th, 2024, 2 p.m., 4 p.m. Let me know if there's anything you'd like to adjust or add.
Could you tell me about that event? What is it about?
The event is titled Meeting. Unfortunately, there's no additional description provided for this event. It's scheduled for March 15th, 2024, from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Would you like to add or modify any details for this event?
No, thank you. Just list all of my reminders, please.
One moment, you have one reminder. By AGI, marked as high importance. Would you like to add or modify any reminders?
No, thanks.
You're welcome. If you need any further assistance,
All right, so I personally think that this already sounds much more natural. So of course you can improve the conversation itself, so the logic, by improving the model. You need to think about it that way. There is the model that has all the intelligence, that makes the decisions, that does all the function calling and so on. Then you have the transcriber, that is basically the thing that analyzes your voice, that understands what you're saying. And then you have the voice, which is, you know, the assistant talking back to you, so the quality of the voice. And I think this was way more professional and much more pleasant than what we had before. And all in all, you can do a lot by improving the system prompt and by describing the functions or the tools better. But yeah, you can customize a lot, and I recommend you play around with that. So I think this is kind of cool. Make sure you check out Vapi in the description down below. As I mentioned, they're sponsoring this video today, and it would help out the channel, and you're also going to get free credits. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and hope you learned something. If so, let me know by hitting a like button and leaving a comment in the comment section down below. It would also help out the channel if you check out the sponsor of this video today, Vapi. As I said, you're going to get free credits. You can play around with that. You don't have to pay for anything. You can take a look at the platform. It's quite impressive. And as always, of course, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell to not miss a single future video for free. Other than that, thank you much for watching. See you in the next video, and bye.